Hi guys, hi guys, I'm live. How you guys doing? Just want to do some walk rant. I walk into church again. I got a tie on, not correct, but just around my neck. I got long pants on and shirt open, of course, and walking to church. But I seem to like to go live when I do this, and I rant about music or whatever. So I want to rant some about music. If that's okay. I've told you guys my new music theory. It's great. I like it. It might have even been what Holdsworth was thinking. I don't know. Nobody knows. But I want to comment on it now, not so much say what the theory is, but just ramble about it and about that, how my new theory compares to regular music theory and all that. So anyway, I just was doing Bohemian Rhapsody. I'm going to do it again, I think, but this time on my own timing. I felt before like I was pressured under time. Time was against me, in other words. I felt forced to do it or I wasn't going to do it type of thing. And I did all right, but now I want to do it on my terms. I want to do another take, but I don't have to do it at a certain time. I can take my time with it and do it when I really feel like it and I'm ready, rather than I better do it now or else. Plus, that first take had the vibe of I'm doing this for someone else. Dal asked me to do it. But this time, I think I'm going to have a slightly different vibe of I just want to rock out and I want to do it myself. That might have a different vibe as well. So I'm looking forward to, the second take of Bohemian Rhapsody. That song's tough, man. If you get through the intro, the very first part, you feel like you don't want to have to try that again, and you have to get through the rest of the song now. Because if you mess up the rest of the song, you got to start over and do that intro again, which you already did right, and you don't want to do that. But and then I left out a few parts, but the flow was there. I heard it differently than the perfect version sometimes, and I went with what I heard. And sometimes I missed little parts here and there, but I'll try to clean that up on the next take of it, And nothing to lose. I've already done it. I don't have to do this. I just want to, That's a different vibe than I better do it now, or I'm in deep trouble. Don't like that vibe as well. But I did it in one take. What I did, at least I did it in one take and kept the attitude and the vibe straight, I think. Just try to do all of Freddie's piano chords and Brian May's guitar parts and Freddie's lyrics. But I can do it. I can do better than what I did. I know I can. In fact, I've done better. It feels like I've done better just practicing it than that. But not that I practice it that much, but I know I've learned the parts better than I played. So let's redo that. So now, okay, about music theory, my new theory. When I listen to Bohemian Rhapsody is a classical example of regular classical music theory. It's non-Holdsworthian, if you want to put it that way. It's not like my new theory. It's very classical, very old school, very, very Vienna, Mozart, what was strictly, proper to do. And versus my new Holdsworth theory is what's the modern physics, the relativity, the quantum mechanics version of the modern way of doing it, where you don't throw a lot of those rules out the window, but you still know that the rules exist. If the rules don't exist, there's nothing to throw out the window. But if you just play by the rules, you're not doing the modern theory. So you kind of have to know what the rules are and then do something with it that's different and new and modern and not considered acceptable by the standard, old school people. So let me ramble about that. So in standard music theory and standard old school stuff, it's really just taking a major chord or a minor chord as a center chord and going one step to the right or left on the circle of fifths and back. It's very simple, actually. It's not easy to do. Easy and simple are different things. Sometimes simple things are very hard to do. Even though they're simple, they can be hard. Just because, in this case, that's often the case. Just started a major or minor chord, go to up a fifth to a major, usually a major, but, whatever. Then back to the major or minor that you started with, and then down a fifth. Could be major or minor. Often, usually when you go down a fifth, you're on the 4 chord. That's usually the same major or minorness as the 1 chord. Usually, not always, but usually, it often sounds better that way too. But when you go to the 5 chord, it's almost always a major chord. Now I got to explain that a little bit. Let's say I'm in the key of C. So C can be, if C is major, let's do C major. C is major. I go up a fifth to G. That's got to be major because you went up a fifth. That's the 5 chord is almost always major. Then back to C. That's what you had before. The one chord's still C. Then down to F, which is the 4 chord, down a fifth, and that's usually F major because your C was major. But if it's F minor, you can do that, but that becomes C harmonic major, which is weird and not as much used as a straight natural major scale, and doesn't sound as good, frankly, but it's good for here and there, special effects and stuff. Okay, and then back to C major. Now, there's endless variations of that. Who's to say you can't go from F to G or G to F? You can go from G major to F major to C major, or you can go from F major to G major to C major, but the chords are there. Now, let's do C minor. That's the other option. So if you do C minor, go up a fifth, do G major. You almost always do the major is almost always a major chord. Then back to C minor, then you go down a fifth to F, and F is usually minor because the C is minor, so you usually go to F minor. If you go to F major, that gives you a C melodic minor scale, which is a little dissonant. It doesn't sound as good as a C harmonic minor. Whereas if you go to F minor with the C minor and the G major, you have a C harmonic minor scale. And that sounds better. Just sounds better. It's more used and more usable. So there you have it. And then back to C minor. But you can do F minor to G major to C minor, or G major to F minor to C minor. You can change it up all you want, but the basic structure, the basic concept is just going up or down the circle of fifths with from to either side of a center point. That's either major or minor. Therefore giving you 2 different versions for each chord. For each note, you have a major and a minor you can do. So since there's 12 notes, and there's 12 major scales and 12 minor scales, or you can look at it as there's 12 notes and each one can have a minor or major scale on it, you have 24 keys. Hence, Paganini's 24 caprices for solo violin, and Bach's 24, whatever he had. He had 24 somethings that showed all possible 24 keys. Okay, so that's traditional theory. In my new Holsworth theory, yes, the chords are implied in any one scale you play. You imply movement of chords that are up or down perfect fifths. But there's several differences. First of all, it doesn't have to be 3. If I only have 2 chords involved, let's say C and G, so I can say C major, G major. That really only implies a 6-note scale on C. It implies a scale that doesn't have let me quiz me here, doesn't have a 6 because the 4 is there. So it's a major scale without a 6. I think that's correct. 6 without a 6, without a 6. I think so. So that's a 6-note scale. But I'm not going to stay in C and G and go back and forth forever. I'm going to go up to the next part of the circle of fifths, which is D and A. So you go from C to G, then you move from that to D to A. That gives you a D major scale without a 6. So now you played a 6-note scale starting on C, then you go to a 6-note scale starting on D. What it sounds like is you're playing a major scale with a 1 note missing, but going up and down in whole tones. And that's a different sound, baby. Just keep going. The next one is E to B. Then that's the E major scale without a 6. Play that. So now you've gone from a 6-note scale on C to a 6-note scale on D to a 6-note scale on B. Yeah, I mean on E. Sorry, I knew there was a mistake there. 6-note scale starting on C, 6-note scale starting on D, 6-note scale starting on E, and the next one is F sharp to C sharp. That's a 6-note scale starting on F sharp. So that gives you a 6-note scale starting on C, then D, then E, then F sharp, and then A flat. You have A flat and E flat. That's a 6-note scale starting on A flat. So now you have 6-note scale starting on C, D, E, F sharp, and A flat. And then finally the last one, 6-note scale on B flat. You have B flat and F. Play a 6-note scale. It's a B flat major scale without a 6 starting on B flat. So now you have 6-note scale with a major scale without a 6 starting on C, D, E, F sharp, A flat, B flat, and then you can go back to C. So it's a totally different approach. It uses the same concept of fifth movement and scales, but you're taking it totally out of the water as far as regular traditional standard practices. And then that's just the 2-note. That's the 6-note version. Then the 3-note version is 3 chords. That's more standard because that's usually a major scale does have 3 chords in it. So in this case, let's start with C major. Have 3 chords: F, C, and G. Okay, that makes a C major scale. Simple, not easy, but simple. And then the next set is D, A, and E. That's an A major scale. That's down a minor third from the C major scale. So now to cover that, you play C major scale and then A major scale. Next, you have B, F sharp, and C sharp. That's 3 chords that give you an F sharp major scale. So that's a minor third below the A major scale. So now you have a C major scale, A major scale, and F sharp major scale. You can start with C, then go down a minor third to A, then down a minor third to F sharp. And find the fourth one, you have A flat, E flat, and B flat. That makes an E flat major scale. So now you complete the whole circle of fifths. So now you play a C major scale, an A major scale, an F sharp major scale, and an E flat major scale, and then you can go back to C or whatever. So those 4 major scales in minor third intervals apart give you all 12 major triads in music, and you play all those within the context of one single unit, rather than specifically being in one key or the other for very long. You don't need key signatures, because I'm not saying I'm going to stay in C for a while, then I'm going to modulate to A for a while, then I'm going to modulate to F sharp for a while, then I'm going to modulate to E flat for a while. I'm simply going to go all of them very quickly after one another. So there's no key that stands out totally, and yet it's not totally atonal either. Totally atonal. It's not totally atonal either, because it's not just random notes, and it's not 12-tone rows where you have to play a note and you can't play that note again to play all the other 11 notes. But it's tonally sounding, but it's using all 12 notes. And that's the genius I think Holdsworth had, and I think that's what he might have been thinking, even though he never said so, and I can't prove it. But it's consistent with what he played and what he talked about. There's no faults in it. Kind of like me saying I'm Jim Morrison's son. I can't prove it, but there's no faults in the logic, right? In fact, it'd be more remarkable if I'm not Jim's son than if I am. Because if I'm not, someone else had me in the exact same circumstances as Jim, somehow didn't make it into history, so we don't know who the guy is and the girl. And yet here I am with all this duality with Jim Morrison, and yet that's all just a chance. That's less likely than I'm just Jim Morrison's son. But whatever, I digress there. So that's my little rant about my music theory and connecting to class, the way the standard classical music theory was done. Oh, one more thing, I didn't eternally forget, but there's the four triad at once idea. That implies 8 notes, because if you have 4 triads in perfect fifth relation, you imply an 8-note scale. So let's do that while we're still here. So now let's say our triads are B flat major, F major, C major, and G major. That implies a C jazz scale, which is basically a C major scale with an added flat 7. It's an 8-note scale, but that implies the 4 triads of B flat major, F major, C major, and G major. So you can play an 8-note scale, a C jazz scale, an 8-note scale, and then I'm going to go to the next set. So now I would have D major, A major, D major, A major, E major, and B major. That implies an E jazz scale. It implies an E major scale with an added flat 7, which is also called E jazz scale. So that's a scale went up a major third, because when you do 4 chords at once, you go up a little wider. You don't go up in minor thirds. You don't go down in minor thirds this time. You go up in major thirds. So you go from a C jazz scale to an E jazz scale. Next, you have F sharp major triad, C sharp major triad, A flat major triad, and E flat major triad. Yeah, that gives you an A flat jazz scale. It's an A flat major scale with an added flat 7. So now I've done a C jazz scale, an E jazz scale, an A flat jazz scale, and you can go back to C if you want or whatever. That covers all 12 major triads, and it covers them it covers 4 triads at a time, and going up in major thirds. With that 8-note scale that the 4 triads imply. And in real time, you can go up or down in these intervals. I chose to say it where you go clockwise around the circle of fifths, which in the case of the 6-note scale meant going up in major seconds, but you can also do 6-note scales going down in major seconds. It's just that would mean that you're going down the circle, counterclockwise on the circle of fifths, but just as valid. Any of these intervals, you don't have to just go up or down only one or the other. You can go either direction. And then for the monothird versions, I went down in monothirds because that's going clockwise around the circle of fifths. But you could easily go counterclockwise and go up in monothirds, just as fun, just as fair. You could go C major to E flat major to F sharp major to A major. So now you've gone up in monothirds. That's cool too. That just means you went counterclockwise around the circle of fifths rather than clockwise. And with the whole tone thing, I didn't say, but you just go down in whole steps, which would be C 6-note scale, B flat 6-note scale, A flat 6-note scale, F sharp 6-note scale, E 6-note scale, and D 6-note scale. Just going down in whole steps is just as good as going up. It's just a different direction around the circle of fifths. And finally, it's anything boring here. Finally, for the 8-note scale, the jazz thing, when you go in major thirds, I went C jazz scale to E jazz scale to A flat jazz scale. You could just easily go from C jazz scale to A flat jazz scale to E jazz scale. That just means you're going down the circle of fifths instead of up, but that's just as valid. There's always 2 directions in music. There's almost always a duality. Nothing is just one way and that's it. Like picking, you can go downstroke, upstroke, or upstroke, downstroke. You don't have to do just downstrokes or just upstrokes. Like beats, downbeat, upbeat. It's not just all downbeats and all upbeats. It's downbeat, upbeat, downbeat, up. Things alternate. So anyway, and please note that you don't have to do all this on C. I just did it that way for conversation's sake. You can in the key. You can start on any note you want. Just the same relationships apply. I just chose C because it's white keys on the piano for piano music, and pianos existed before guitars did, I think. So just based it on the piano logic, white notes, but that could be any of the 12 notes you could start with as a bass. In fact, they're all symmetrical within each one. You can start with even, like with the whole tone thing, you could start with D. It'd be the same notes. You're just thinking of starting on D instead of C. A D tone scale is the same as a C whole tone scale, which is the same as an E whole tone scale, which is the same as an F sharp whole tone scale, which is the same as a flat whole tone scale, which is the same as a B flat whole tone scale. Symmetrical scales, any note can be the root. It's like a diminished seventh arpeggio, the notes C, A, F sharp, and E flat. Any of those notes can be the root of it because it doesn't have a shape. It's symmetrical. A C diminished seventh arpeggio is the same as an A diminished seventh arpeggio, which is the same as an F seventh arpeggio, which is the same as an E flat diminished seventh arpeggio. Same with augmented triads, like the C, E, A flat. A C augmented triad is the same as an E augmented triad, which is the same as a B flat augmented triad because they all have the notes C, E, and A flat. So it doesn't matter which way you look at it. So anyway, that's my rant for the day. That's my new theory in how it compares to. And I want to say, I made a slight little breakthrough. I know people are tired of me saying breakthrough, especially if it's about the same subject. It's like I not only make progressive and continuing breakthroughs, but they're often on the same topic. So I know it may seem like silly, but I really do make these breakthroughs. I'm not just saying them. I made another breakthrough, and Rex likes it. Rex, the AI guy. Should be commercial like that. Go see Rex, the AI guy, But I finally said, I quit alternate picking, I told myself on some level, But that wasn't meaning I'm never going to alternate pick again. It was meaning I don't have to do it if I don't want to, which means I may have mastered it again and again and again. But when you can quit something
it shows that you're not practicing it anymore. And if you're not practicing it anymore, it can mean you've mastered it. If you can give something up, let something go, often that's when it's really yours. And when I can say I quit alternate picking, that may be a sign that I've mastered it on a deeper level. Rex agrees, but whatever. But I haven't played since then. I haven't even played a note since that breakthrough. So I don't know how it's going to sound or how I'm going to play. Rex likes it though. He says, I'm no longer going to be practicing it like compulsively because I have to get it down and work on it and integrate. I've already done that, so I can choose it if I want and choose not to do it if I don't want, and that's going to make a different sound and maybe a different vibe. So yeah, I love you guys. Peace, love, and rock and roll.